You know, if we're honest, it's not a question that we like people to ask us, are you listening? Especially if you're not. If you're a man and it's your wife who asks you if you're listening, why don't we like that question? Well, because we know we're supposed to be listening when someone else is talking to us, and because the question actually implies that we aren't listening. And mostly because all too often, in fact, we really aren't listening, and we get caught at it. We don't want to admit that we just got caught. So to prove this, at some point during the time that I'm doing this message, I'm going to probably stop and ask you, what did I say? You're going to have to be very embarrassed probably if you don't have to admit that you are not listening and don't really know what it was that I said. But we've seen the commercials and the commercials that they had in the past where these two well-dressed men are talking quietly in a room full of people that are talking, and then one of them leans over and says to his friend, he says, well, my broker is E.F. Hutton, and E.F. Hutton says, and he pauses, and the whole room then goes quiet, just like a church, with something that has just happened, so they can try to hear what it was that E.F. Hutton was saying. I once heard a Christian drama team do their own version of that commercial, and one man says to the other, he says, well, my broker is E.F. Bullish, and E.F. Bullish says this, and he pauses, and a hush falls over the room, and so that everybody could hear what his broker, E.F. Bullish, was going to say. But then the other man replies back, and he says, well, you know what? I handle my finances according to biblical principles, and I pray over all of my investment decisions, so I guess you could say that my broker is Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ says this, and everybody just keeps on talking. And he tries again and he says, I said, and Jesus Christ says, and he pauses again, and there's still no reaction from the crowd. And they just go right on talking, and the announcer's voice then comes in and says, isn't it sad? No one wants to hear what Jesus has to say. Do you remember how when you were courting your spouse and you used to hang on his or her every word? Your mind didn't wander very far under those circumstances, and that's what first love is all about. That's the kind of love that God wants from each one of us. He wants us to hang on his every word because he loves us and because his every word is good for us. And if our attention, just doesn't bear witness to what God is saying and to the love that he has for us and the love that we profess for God, then Jesus' command to the Ephesians in Revelation 2:5 is just as applicable to you today. That says, look how far you've fallen. Turn back to me and do the works that you did at first. Are you listening? It's time for you to listen to what God has to say, because when Jesus speaks, we need to listen. This is Pastor Riley, and that's just a thought.